Thomas the Tank Engine was feeling bright and cheerful. It was a splendid day. "Good morning," he whistled to some cows, but the cows didn't reply. "Never mind," said Thomas. "They're busy with their breakfast." Next, he saw Bertie. "Hello, Bertie. Care for a race today?" But all Bertie could say was, "Ouch! That's another hole in the road." "I'm sorry, Bertie," smiled Thomas. Thomas was still in good spirits when Bertie arrived at the next station. "Bad luck, Bertie. Now, if you were a steam engine, you would run on a pair of reliable rails." "Huh," replied Bertie. "The railway was supposed to deliver tar to mend the road 2 weeks ago. You can't trust a thing that runs on rails." "I run on rails. You can trust me, Bertie. I'll see if I can find out what's happened." And Thomas puffed away towards the big station. James was snorting about in the yard. "It's too bad," he grumbled. "Percy goes to work at the harbor and I do his job. Here, there, and everywhere. Take that!" "Oh," groaned the freight cars. "Just you wait. We'll show you." Gordon laughed. "I'll tell you what, James. If you pretended to be ill everywhere, you couldn't shunt freight cars here or go to the quarry there, could you?" "What a good idea," agreed James. "Look, here comes Thomas. I'll start pretending now." Thomas was sorry to see the engines looking miserable. "Cheer up," he puffed. "It's a beautiful day." "Yes," grumbled Gordon, "but not for James." "What's the matter?" asked Thomas. "He's sick," replied Gordon. "Yes, he is. I mean, I am," stuttered James. "I don't feel well at all." "Don't worry," said Thomas kindly. "I'll help out if you're ill." Gordon and James snickered quietly to each other. Some of James's cars were coupled behind Thomas and he steamed away to the quarry. The cars were still cross. "We couldn't pay James back for bumping us, so we'll play tricks on Thomas instead. One engine is as good as another." But Thomas didn't hear them. He collected all the stone from the quarry and set off back to the junction. Danger lay ahead. "Now for our plan," giggled the cars. "Go faster, go faster." They pushed Thomas over the switches. "Slow down," called Thomas's driver and applied the brakes. Poor Thomas stood dazed and surprised in a muddy pond as a toad eyed him suspiciously. "Bust my buffers," muttered Thomas. "The day started so well, too." Duck pulled away the cars, and Edward helped Thomas back to the junction. Suddenly, Thomas remembered the missing tar. He told Edward all about it. "That's strange," said Edward. "A car full of tar has been left at my station. That must be it. Driver will make sure it gets to Bertie now." Later, James spoke to Thomas. "I'm sorry about your accident," he muttered, "and so is Gordon. We didn't mean to get you into trouble." "No, indeed," spluttered Gordon. "A mere misunderstanding, Thomas. All's well that ends well." Just then, Bertie arrived. He looked much more cheerful. "My road's being mended now." "Oh, I am glad," replied Thomas. "Thanks for all you did," added Bertie. "Now I know I can trust an engine, especially if his name is Thomas." Gordon and James puffed silently away to the shed, but Thomas still had company. "Well, well," he sighed, "what a day for surprises." The toad, who was looking forward to a ride home, noisily agreed. Bertie the bus was giving some visitors a tour of the island of Sodor. It was their last afternoon, and Edward was preparing to take them to meet Bill and Ben. He found it hard to start the heavy train. Did you see him straining? Asked Henry.
Positively painful,
Remarked James. Just pathetic, grunted Gordon. He should give up and be preserved before it's too late. Shut up, burst out Duck. You're all jealous. Edward's better than any of you. You're right, Duck, said Boko. Edward's old, but he'll surprise us all. I've done it. We're off. I've done it. We're off, said Edward, as he finally puffed out of the station. Bill and Ben were delighted to see the visitors. They loved being photographed. Later, they took the party to the China Clay Works in a brake van special. Everyone had a splendid time, and the visitors were most impressed. Then Edward took the visitors home. On the way, the weather changed. Wind and rain buffeted Edward. His sanding gear failed, and his fireman rode in front, dropping sand on the rails by hand. Suddenly, Edward's wheels slipped fiercely, and with a shrieking crack, something broke. The crew inspected the damage. Repairs took some time. One of your crank pins broke, Edward, said his driver. We've taken your side rods off. Now you're like an old-fashioned engine. Can you get these people home? They must start back tonight. I'll try, sir, promised Edward. Edward puffed and pulled his hardest, but his wheels kept slipping, and he could not start the heavy train. The passengers were anxious. The driver, fireman, and conductor went along the train, making adjustments between the coaches. We've loosened the couplings, Edward. Now you can pick up your coaches one by one, just as you do with freight cars. That'll be much easier, said Edward. Come on, he puffed and moved cautiously forward. The first coach moving helped to start the second, and the second helped the third. I've done it! I've done it! Puffed Edward. Steady, boy, warned his driver. Well done, boy! You've got them! You've got them! And he listened happily to Edward's steady beat as he forged slowly but surely ahead. At last, battered, weary, but unbeaten, Edward steamed in. Henry was waiting for the visitors with the special train. Beep, beep. Sir Topham Hatt angrily pointed to the clock, but excited passengers cheered and thanked Edward, his driver, and fireman. Duck and Boko saw to it that Edward was left in peace. Gordon and James remained respectfully silent. One winter evening, Henry's driver said, "We'll be out early tomorrow. We've got to take the Flying Kipper. Don't tell Gordon, but I think if we pull the Kipper nicely, Sir Topham Hatt will let us pull the Express. The special coal they gave you is working well." "Hooray!" cried Henry. "That will be lovely." All kinds of ships use the harbor at the big station by the sea. There are passenger ships, cargo ships, and fishing boats also come here. They unload their fish on the quay. Some of it goes to shops in the town, and the rest in a special train to other places far away. This is the train the railwaymen call the Flying Kipper. Henry was ready at 5 o'clock. There was snow and frost. Men hustled and shouted, loading up the crates of fish. The last door banged, the guard showed his green lamp, and the Flying Kipper was ready to go. Come on, don't be silly, puffed Henry to the freight cars. The cars shuddered and groaned. Trickety-trock, all right. That's better, puffed Henry. Clouds of smoke and steam poured from his funnel into the cold air, and the fire's light shone brightly. Hurry, panted Henry. They were going well. The light grew better. Signal lights shone green as they passed. Then a yellow signal appeared ahead. His driver prepared to stop, but the home signal was down. All clear, Henry. Away we go. They couldn't know the switches from the main line to a siding were frozen, and the home signal should have been set at danger, but snow had forced it down. A freight train was waiting in the siding to let the Flying Kipper pass, and the driver and fireman were drinking cocoa in the caboose. The Kipper is due, said the conductor. Who cares, said the fireman. This is good cocoa. The driver got up. Come on, fireman, back to our engine. They got out just in time. Henry's driver and fireman had jumped clear before the crash, but Henry lay dazed and surprised. Sir Topham Hatt came to see him. The signal was down, sir, said Henry. Cheer up, Henry. It wasn't your fault. Ice and snow caused the accident. I'm sending you to Crewe, a fine place for sick engines. They'll give you a new shape and a larger firebox. You'll feel a different engine, and you won't need special coal anymore. Won't that be nice? Yes, sir, said Henry, doubtfully. Henry liked being at Crewe, but was glad to come home. A crowd of people waited to see him arrive in his new shape. He looked so splendid and strong that they gave him 3 cheers. Beep, beep, he whistled. Thank you very much. I'm sorry to say that a lot of little children are often late for school because they wait to see Henry go by. They often see him pulling the express. He does it so well that Gordon is jealous. But that's another story. One morning, Thomas was being cleaned when Gordon arrived. Mud had blown all over his smart blue paint. Hello, Gordon, called Thomas. You look as if you've had a mud bath. Be a sensible engine and have a shower instead. Gordon snorted. I haven't time to dawdle over my appearance like fussy tank engines do. The wind blew stronger. Gordon, slow down, called his driver. This made Gordon crosser still. Now I'll be dirty and late, he hissed. At the next station was a sign. All trains must wash down daily. James had just finished being cleaned. Come on, Gordon, said his driver. You'll feel better, too, after a good hose down. Bah, said Gordon, and angrily let off steam. You're a very naughty engine, said Gordon's driver. Now James will need another shower. You'll have to wait your turn till later. Good riddance, huffed Gordon. I'm far too busy to waste time with water. He finished his journey safely and steamed into the big station. Sir Topham Hatt was waiting. So were Gordon's coaches and the passengers. "Goodness gracious," said Sir Topham Hatt. "You can't pull the train. Henry will have to do it. Gordon, you'd better get cleaned straight away." Gordon was soon being washed. "Mind my eyes," he grumbled. Then he pulled cars for the rest of the day. Freight trains," he spluttered. He felt his position deeply. "That's for you, and you, and you." "Cars will be cars," laughed James. "They won't with me," snorted Gordon. "I'll teach them." James got ready to take the express when Gordon returned. "Be careful," warned Gordon. "The hills are slippery. You may need help." "I don't need help on hills," replied James huffily. Gordon thinks he knows everything. Earlier, a storm had swept Gordon's hill, blowing leaves onto the tracks, which made them slippery. Even though the storm had passed, the hill was still difficult to climb. James knew this. The signal showed clear, and James began to go faster. I'll do it, he puffed. Halfway up, he was not so sure. I must do it, but his wheels slipped on the leaves. He couldn't pull the train at all. Help, help, whistled James. His wheels were turning forward, but the heavy coaches pulled him backwards. The whole train started slipping down the hill. His driver shut off steam and put on the brakes. Then carefully he stopped the train. Gordon saw everything. "Ah, well, we live and learn. Never mind, little James. I'm going to push behind." Clouds of smoke and steam billowed from the snorting engines as they struggled up the hill. "We can do it," puffed James. "We will do it," puffed Gordon. At last, they reached the top. "Beep, beep. Thank you. Goodbye," whistled James. "Boop, boop," answered Gordon. "Goodbye." That night, Sir Topham Hatt came to see the engines. Gordon was miserable. "Please, sir," said Thomas, "can Gordon pull coaches again now?" "If you understand that having a washdown is essential to every engine, then yes, Gordon, you may." "Thank you," grunted Gordon. "Dirty or clean, I'm a famous machine." But no one heard but him. Toby and Henrietta were enjoying their new job on the island of Sodor, but they do look old-fashioned and did need new paint. James was very rude whenever he saw them. "Yuck! What dirty objects," he would say. At last, Toby lost patience. "James," he asked, "why are you red?" "I am a splendid engine," answered James, "ready for anything. You never see my paint dirty." "Oh," said Toby innocently, "that's why you once needed bootlaces, to be ready, I suppose." James went redder than ever and snorted off. It was such an insult to be reminded of the time a bootlace had been used to mend a hole in his coaches. At the end of the line, James left his coaches and got ready for his next train. It was a slow freight, stopping at every station to pick up and set down cars. James hated slow freight trains. Dirty cars from dirty siding. Yeah! Starting with only a few, he picked up more and more cars at each station till he had a long train. At first, the freight cars behaved well, but James bumped them so crossly that they were determined to get back at him. Presently, they approached the top of Gordon's Hill. Heavy freight trains halt here to set their brakes. James had had an accident with cars before and should have remembered this. "Wait, James, wait," said the driver, but James wouldn't wait. He was too busy thinking what he would say to Toby when they next met. The freight car's chance had come. "Hurrah! Hurrah!" they laughed, and banging their buffers, they pushed him down the hill. "On! On!" yelled the cars. "I've got to stop! I've got to stop!" groaned James. Disaster lay ahead. Something sticky splashed all over James. He had run into 2 tar wagons and was black from smokebox to cad. He was more dirty than hurt. But the tar wagons and some cars were all to pieces. Toby and Percy were sent to help and came as quickly as they could. "Look here, Percy," exclaimed Toby. "Whatever is that dirty object? That's James, didn't you know?" "It's James's shape," said Toby. "But James is a splendid red engine, and you never see his paint dirty." James pretended he hadn't heard. Toby and Percy cleared away the unhurt cars and helped James home. Sir Topham Hatt met them. "Well done, Percy and Toby." He turned to James. "Fancy letting your cars run away. I am surprised. You're not fit to be seen. You must be cleaned at once. Toby shall have a new coat of paint." "Please, sir, can Henrietta have one too?" said Toby. "Certainly, Toby." "Oh, thank you, sir. She will be pleased." All James could do was watch Toby as he ran off happily with the news. One day, Henry wanted to rest, but Percy was talking to some engines. He was telling them about the time he had braved bad weather to help Thomas. "It was raining hard. Water swirled under my boiler. I couldn't see where I was going, but I struggled on." "Oh, Percy, you are brave." "Well, it wasn't anything really. Water's nothing to an engine with determination." "Tell us more, Percy." "What are you engines doing here?" hissed Henry. "This shed is for Sir Topham Hatt's engines. Go away." "Silly things," Henry snorted. "They're not silly." Percy had been enjoying himself. "They are silly, and so are you. Water's nothing to an engine with determination. Huh. "Anyway," said cheeky Percy, "I'm not afraid of water. I like it." He ran off to the harbor singing. "Once an engine attached to a train was afraid of a few drops of rain. No one ever lets me forget the time I wouldn't come out of the tunnel in case the rain spoiled my paint," huffed Henry. Thomas was looking at the board on the key. "Danger." "We mustn't go past it," he said. "That's orders." "Why?" "Danger means falling down something," said Thomas. "I went past danger once and fell down a mine." I can't see a mine, said Percy. He didn't know that the foundations of the quay had sunk. The rails now sloped downward to the sea. Stupid board, said Percy. He made a plan. One day, he whispered to the cars, will you give me a bump when we get to the quay? The cars had never been asked to bump an engine before. They giggled and chattered about it. Driver doesn't know my plan, chuckled Percy. On, laughed the cars. Percy thought they were helping. I'll pretend to stop at the station, but the cars will push me past the board. Then I'll make them stop. I can do that whenever I like. Every wise engine knows you cannot trust freight cars. Go on, they yelled and bumped Percy's driver and fireman off the footplate. Ow, said Percy, sliding past the board. Percy was frantic. That's enough! Percy was sunk. You are a very disobedient engine. Percy knew that voice. Please, sir, get me out, sir. I'm truly sorry, sir. No, Percy, we cannot do that till high tide. I hope it will teach you to take care of yourself. Yes, sir. It was dark when they brought floating cranes to rescue Percy. He was too cold and stiff to move by himself. Next day, he was sent to the works on Henry's freight train. Well, chuckled Henry. Did you like the water? No. I am surprised. You need more determination, Percy. Water's nothing to an engine with determination, you know. Perhaps you will like it better next time. Percy is quite determined that there won't be a next time. Toby is a tram engine. He has cow catchers and side plates and doesn't look like a steam engine at all. He takes freight cars from farms and villages to the main line and is cheerful to everyone he meets. He has a coach called Henrietta who has seen better days. It's not fair at all, she grumbles, remembering that she used to be full and 9 cars would rattle behind her. Now there are only 3 or 4, for the farms and factories send their goods mostly by truck. Toby is always careful. The cars, buses, and trucks often have accidents. Toby hasn't had an accident for years, but the buses are crowded and Henrietta is empty. A lady and a stout gentleman stood on Toby's platform. He was, of course, Sir Topham Hatt, but Toby didn't know this yet. Come on, grandfather, cried the children. Do look at this engine. That's a tram engine, Stephen, said Sir Topham Hatt. Is it electric? Asked Bridget. Whoosh, hissed Toby. Shh, said her brother. You've offended him. But trams are electric, aren't they? They are mostly, but this is a steam tram. May we go in it, grandfather, please? Stop, said Sir Topham Hatt to the conductor. They all scrambled into Henrietta. Hip, hip, hooray, chanted Henrietta. But Toby didn't sing. Electric indeed, he snorted. He was proud of being a steam train. What is your name? Asked Sir Topham Hatt. Toby, sir. Thank you, Toby, for a very nice ride. Thank you, sir, said Toby. He felt better now. This gentleman, he thought, is a gentleman who knows how to speak to engines. The children came every day for 2 weeks. Sometimes they rode with the conductor, sometimes in empty cars. On the last day of all, the driver invited them into his cab. All were sorry when they had to go away. And Sir Topham Hatt and his family thanked everyone. "Come again soon," replied Toby. We will, called the children. And they waved till Toby was out of sight. The months passed. Toby had few cars and fewer passengers. "Our last day, Toby," said his driver one morning. "The manager says we must close tomorrow." That day, everyone wanted the chance of a last ride. The passengers joked and sang, but Toby and his driver wished they wouldn't. "Goodbye, Toby," said the passengers afterwards. "We're sorry your line is closing down." "So am I," said Toby. Nobody wants me, Toby thought, and went unhappily to sleep. Next morning, the shed was flung open, and old Toby woke with a start to see his driver waving a piece of paper at him. "Wake up, Toby," he shouted excitedly. "The mail has just arrived, and there is a letter for us from the stout gentleman. Maybe it's good news."